Hi, everyone. Welcome to the West Coast Preps Podcast. I am Gregory Moreland-Toon, your host for today. We have an amazing podcast coming up for you. We got 4 different guests this time. We're going to go Jack, Dylan, Intern, Lucca, and then our co-owner, Chris Jackson, is going to end this podcast as we recorded that this morning. So enjoy the podcast and have a great time. All right, Jack, welcome back onto the West Coast Preps Podcast after our little 1-week hiatus. How's everything going with you?
Good. It's great to be back. Basketball is in full swing. We've got a lot of hoops to talk about since you and I last chatted, and I can't wait to dive into it here for your quick hitters on all things Bay Area high school hoops.
Yeah, and once again, Jack, he put it on his resume. He could predict the future, but I guess he still hasn't perfected it. So we're recording this on Tuesday. If anything crazy happens between now and when this gets posted on Thursday, don't blame me, blame Jack. So the first thing we're going to talk about is whose stock is rising and who is falling right now as we're heading into tail end of the regular season.
Yeah, so I'll start on the boys' side, and a couple of North Bay teams are seeing their stock rise pretty considerably. Sonoma County is not an area that's known for a lot of good boys basketball, especially in the grand scheme of the Bay Area, Northern California. But the Santa Rosa rivalry between Montgomery and Cardinal Newman this year is as good as it's been in years. Montgomery started the year out of our rankings. Within a couple of weeks, they were into our rankings, and now they're around the mid-teens to early teens. So that is a team led by Caden DeVries, this do-it-all senior who's a fourth-year varsity player, who's really launched the expectations for that Montgomery program from NBL Oak playoffs and maybe a lower NCS bid to a team that can truly contend in the NCS Division II bracket, which is pretty remarkable for a school that didn't have such high expectations coming into this year. That a lot of that is a testament to Coach Arrow and the way he runs the program. But Caden DeVries is someone who I expect to be seeing playing at the next level, whether that's junior college, Division II, Division III, or maybe one day Division I, maybe after a stop at one of those levels. He is a phenomenal player. And then across town at Cardinal Newman, these two teams have played twice now. They split. Both games were phenomenal, a 1-point game and a 3-point game. Montgomery won the first one in December, and Cardinal Newman just won the rematch. So Cardinal Newman is led by a lot of young talent. Diego Gonzalez Flores, that guy's freshman, sophomore, playing good minutes. And this is a team that's getting more and more mature every game. So those two are really dangerous, not just in the NBL Oak and kind of Sonoma County scene, but in the entire NCS scene. And moving over to the girls side, I wrote this morning when we published the rankings that a lot of teams are seeing midseason surges after some tumultuous beginnings, including Marin Catholic, Salesian, and California. California, a lot like Montgomery, started outside of our rankings. They're in the eval, which means, when you're in a league with San Ramon Valley and Carondelet, you're kind of going to be overlooked a lot. But this is a team that's 18-2. They've won 14 of their last 15. And they're absolutely putting on a clinic in the post game and playing defense. They've held opponents under 30 points like on 6 or 7 different occasions. I don't have it exactly in front of me, but this is a team that suffocates you. I saw them back in December put the clamps on Amador Valley, 2 points in the first quarter, 6 points in the second quarter. I think Amador finished with 20 or so points. So this is a team that knows how to win and win ugly. So Cal High, props to them. Salesian, which is a historically really successful program, and Coach Stephen Pizzola told me at the beginning of the year when I was at their first game, he said, this is a team that's young. We only have one returning starter, and they're going to need to take some lumps. And take some lumps they did, and they fell in our rankings because of it, but now they're surging again. They haven't lost on this side of the calendar, and the same can be said for Marin Catholic. So a lot of teams with rising stock. I'll go quicker on the falling stock because it's less fun. It's less glamorous, obviously. The Redwood boys have seen a lot of wins just slip through their fingers. St. Francis and Valley Christian boys have struggled in a really tough W-Cal slate. So that's a few teams who are seeing some games not exactly go their way that are still good teams and could be in the mix, in a month or so from now, but are not having the best January so far. So that's your rising and falling stock in the Bay Area hoops right now.
And then we talked about a couple weeks ago how the defense was really dominating, and now you're seeing the offenses catch up. What's the big difference you've seen in the games that you've been to lately?
Kids just making shots. And I think it's as simple as guys getting in rhythm, right? Because in November and December, as much as everyone shoots, coaches say we work on X and Y and Z at practice because we know on their own time they're going to shoot. But it's still needing to get that shot in a game rhythm. I was at games in December. I remember a game at Sarah in December where it was just brick city. between Sarah and Sacred Heart Prep, a real ugly game played in the low 40s. And now you're seeing Sarah consistently scoring in the 60s. You're seeing individual players kind of all over the Bay get 30-plus point performances where that what really wasn't happening in the beginning of the year. So people are just starting to get hot. And sometimes that's as simple as it is in basketball. You can get open looks, you can scheme up good looks, but you got to hit the shot. And people are hitting shots. It's not that the defense is getting worse. The defense is probably also getting better. It's just guys are hitting contested looks. People are in the rhythm of the season right now. We're probably past the halfway point of the basketball season. So guys have been putting up a ton of shots, and people are starting to get really comfortable within their offensive identities for a lot of different teams.
And then also coming off our last episode, we talked how the Bay Area teams have really been able to dominate outside of the area, between Sacramento teams and some of the Southern California teams. One team that you've noticed that's been a really fun matchup is Corona Centennial, though. Just kind of talk about some of the matchups that the Bay Area teams have had with them.
Yeah, I think I mentioned Corona Centennial last time we talked because they had lost to De La Salle and Salesian once. And since then, they've lost to Salesian again. And then Reardon joined the party and beat them this week. So I think Corona Centennial has seen enough of the Bay Area this year. They are tired of playing some of the 4 or 5 best teams in the Bay Area because that's a really good team. That's a Southern California powerhouse. And the Bay Area's best has taken it to them this year. And there are a number of other really good out-of-area wins. De La Salle also beat Los Alamitos. We saw Granada beating Bishop Gorman. So the Bay Area's best teams have fared really well outside of the area. And Corona Centennial, for as good of a program as it is, has kind of been a punching bag for that.
I know this wasn't on our script, but I'm just curious, where's the rankings looking at in that top 5 area? Because it just seems so loaded at the top.
The boys' rankings, I'll pull it up for you. We got Salesian holding the top spot as they have pretty much all year. And then we got De La Salle, hasn't moved. Granada also hasn't moved after they made a big jump from 6 to 3 about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Branson is holding on. Branson has more losses than a lot of the teams in the top 6-7 range, but all their losses are so quality, and also factoring in that they're not going to lose the rest of the way playing Marin County teams until the playoffs. So Branson is pretty set up nicely to be one of those open teams. Got Reardon at 5th. They keep stacking really nice wins. They have a chance to jump Branson if they have some more impressive wins than Branson. If Branson isn't completely dominant down the stretch. And then a bit of a cutoff, you get to the Dublin SRV midi range. And after that, we have St. Ignatius and Sarah rounding out the top 10. So a lot of WCAL action in that top 10, which is always the case. And in any sport, we're really covering a phenomenal athletic league. So that's how the boys' top 10 is shaping up right now.
And then we're going to move on to the girls' side. And this almost seems like a rhetorical question at this point. The question is, will Midi girls just walk to the open title?
Yeah, I think this year more so than maybe any other year, they have a chance to be heavily favored against any team. Last year they lost to Etowanda in that state title game. This year, Etowanda is still that second team nipping at their heels. I think they're also top 20 or even top 10 nationally. Midi's still holding that number 1 national ranking. But I still think just what I saw from Midi last weekend and the margins they're winning at and the national recognition they're getting, I think they would have to play a poor game to lose to Etowanda. They beat the number 2 team in the country back in December. They score at such an insane clip. They play so high, and that's so unique in the girls' game. They're always it's like they're taking candy from a baby, and they're keeping the ball away from a younger sibling when they're playing against Sacred Heart Prep, who let me double check this, or Sacred Heart Cathedral is the number 6 team in the Bay Area in our rankings, and Midi beat them by 40. It wasn't particularly close, but maybe Sacred Heart poured on a little bit at the end. That's a really good Sacred Heart Cathedral team. And Midi was up 10-0 in 2 minutes, and the game was over, which we knew it would be, but it's still kind of shocking to see the margin. So Etowanda is really good, probably a generational level team and program, but Midi, the height and speed and just shot making that Midi plays with is so overwhelming that when they are supplementing that with the intense team defense that they can turn up when they play teams that are closer to their level, they're a machine, and they're frankly probably unbeatable in the state of California, definitely in the Bay Area and Northern California.
Yeah, that open title has evaded them for the last couple of years, and it seems.
Yeah, I think Sue wants it. She's due. Talking to her last week, she didn't look satisfied after winning her 800th game.
She never has looked satisfied, to be honest. Yeah. She always wants more out of her team, that's for sure. All right, I'll give you 30 seconds because you and Dylan are damn Niner fans. Give me a prediction for the game this weekend.
I like to think of myself as more of a measured Niner fan than a lot of Niner fans. I think maybe, truth serum, you'd give me that. I'm confident this week. I really am. I think I was more nervous about the Packers. Maybe that's just expectation based because you're so favored. You're almost scared of the torture if you do lose. And the Packers are so hot. Not that the Lions aren't hot. I think the Niners win by 10 or 11. I think it's a closer game than that. Maybe a late score puts them up 2 scores. I see 28-17. I said that in the chat the other day. I think that comes true, but I don't think it's a comfortable win, but I think they do win.
Well, go Jared Goff and the Lions. I hope the Niners lose. I know everyone listening to this podcast will hate me, but I'm a Niners hater this year.
Hey, this is a West Coast Preps podcast, and Jared Goff is a former Bay Area prep. So
Exactly.
look out for my story either Wednesday or Thursday. It could already be published when this comes out or as it comes out, but I'm gonna have a little look into Goff in his high school days in the Bay too.
Perfect. We're super excited about that. Make sure you go read that on westcoastpreps.com, along with all of other Jack's stories that are being posted daily. Thank you, Jack. Hi, Dylan. Welcome back to the West Coast Preps podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing good as well. We are recording this on Wednesday at 12:30. So if anything happens between now and when this gets posted on Thursday morning, be sure to blame Dylan for not predicting the future. All right, let's get started. We're going to start off with just kind of some of the games that you've been at over the last couple weeks since we did our last segment. There's definitely been some good ones, so go over some of your favorites.
Yeah, so I have a list of 6 games I've been to that have been all really good. One of them I was at was the boys St. Francis versus SI. SI won that match 2-1. SI St. Francis played really well all the way through. They're a really good team. They have a bunch of players led by Brandon Angulo, and they have another player on their team. David Escobar is his name. He's a really good player. Angulo's a transfer. He scored a goal. So they got and they have a new head coach, so they're a young team, but they're still a really good team. They won that game. They made it interesting. And then Mountain View versus Palo Alto. Mountain View's proving why they are a team to watch. You look at that girls team play, and they're just such a good team. They have really good tactics. Their defense is incredible. They won that game as well. They had a really good game with that. They have a really young team as well, but they also have a good mix of veterans. That Mountain View won that game 1-0, and it was a close game, score wise, but you could kind of tell Mountain View had a lot of chances in that game. So for them, they were due for a score late in the game. They got one off a penalty kick. And then on Friday night last week, I was at the game of the week for the boys, which is O'Dowd versus Piedmont. And Bishop O'Dowd this year, they lost on Saturday to Doherty Valley, but overall, they've been a really good team. They took down Berkeley earlier in the season. They're just a really good team. They play super well. They're really fast and athletic, which in high school is probably one of the most important aspects you can have for a team is just speed and agility and quickness. If you have that, you're going to be a pretty solid team. And O'Dowd has a lot of that. And they have a lot of skill guys. And then on Saturday morning, I hit up Redwood versus Petaluma. And Redwood is a really good team. They are in the thick of that MCAL race. Colette Boyden is their captain. She had a really good game that day as well, and so did Avery Tucker. They both had a goal, and Redwood is proving why they are a team that should be watched. They have been a very good team as of late. They are hot. They were able to pull out a win over Petaluma. They are now in the thick of the race with Tam, MC, and Branson. Those are the main teams that are going to be probably coming out of that MCAL. And then on Monday, Deanza Pinole Valley, we will talk more about them later on with some players, but they are a very good team. They are a team that has a lot of players that are really fast. They have this kid named Eric Preston. I'll talk more about him in a bit, but that kid, he's a sophomore and he's just super fast on the wing. They gave him the ball a lot and he had a couple goals in that game, both of which came unassisted with him making moves around the defenders. So he was using his quickness and speed to do that. And then last night was Clayton Valley versus Northgate. Clayton Valley had 2 goals. They pretty much dominated the game from start to end. They did not really allow Northgate to have the ball in their half at all. So it was pretty much just a Clayton Valley offensive clinic. They had a lot of shots and chances, but they eventually were able to capitalize on some opportunities and score. But you can tell that Clayton Valley is a team that is going to be in the thick of a Diablo foothill race that has Los Lomas and teams like that at the top. So that's going to come down to the very end in that league.
And then as you've been to a ton of these games and been doing a bunch of roundups for us lately that's going on the site, you've seen a lot of players that have just had a spectacular season. So go over some
Oh
of the
yeah.
top players you've seen that's dominating right
Yeah. So right off the bat, there's Noel Cabrales from Newark Memorial. You can honestly throw him and Sean Ronti together because they are the scoring bros. Sean Ronti leads the team in assists. Noel Cabrales has 29 goals, but he has been on fire. He scored every game since January 6th, and since then he scored at least 2 goals in every match. And against Kennedy and James Logan, he had 3 goals in each of those games. So he has just been on fire. Newark Memorial's undefeated. The game I was at, he had 2 goals against Moreau. The first one came in the first 3 minutes of the game. So he is a super good player. He's a big reason why they are undefeated. And I think he's going to hit that mark of 40 goals. There's a few games left, but yeah, he's been a stud. And then another player who I mentioned before was Eric Preston. He's a sophomore. He's actually looking to play in the MLS after high school. He already has some MLS teams talking to him. He's got 24 goals on the season. And this year, since the month of January started, he's just been on fire. And he's establishing himself as a star in that team. And he's only a sophomore. And then moving on to some girls players, we have Marin Jones from TAM. She was a first league selection last season, and you can tell why. Tam has won 8 straight games, and Jones, she scored 7 of the last 8 matches, and she has 16 goals on the season, and she leads the team in scoring. So she's just picking up right where she left off last year. She's a cog on that team. She's a superstar. Definitely a player that is going to be a big, big factor in the playoffs. And then the last player is Ali Sai. I'm sorry if I'm saying her, her name wrong, but she's a Branson player. She has 13 goals on the year, but 8 of them have come in January alone. And she had 2 goals and 3 assists against San Rafael. And she really just has been dominating this month. I've gotten a lot of her name has been in our roundups a lot over the last couple weeks. So she's just a star in the making. So yeah, I mean, those are players that I think are just going to really, really jump off the page even more come playoff time.
Yep. And then we're going to jump over to the rankings portion of this. I want you to go through the top 5 teams and then maybe a sleeper team on each side that can jump into that top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now for boys, we have St. Francis at 1, Mountain View at 2, Berkeley at 3, Doherty Valley at 4, and Cardinal Newman at 5. All of those teams have proven this year that they are teams to beat. St. Francis is still undefeated. They only have one tie, and they tied to Sarah on the road. But ever since then, they've been on fire. Mountain View is 13-1. They only have one loss to Carlmont, but it was in December. But since then, they have just been absolutely crazy. They had a game against Sarah that they were down 2-0. They came back and won 3-2 after in the second half. So they are on fire. Berkeley's 15-1. They had a loss to O'Dowd. It's a bit of an upset, but the way O'Dowd's been playing, it's understandable. Ever since then though, they have just been on fire. They had a 3-0 win over Mount Eden in their most recent game, and Berkeley is looking like a team that's going to be a threat in the playoffs. Doherty Valley's 8-3-3. They've won the last 2 of 4, including beating Cardinal Newman and O'Dowd, 2 teams that are really, really good as well. So Doherty Valley is a team that's going to be tough. They also tied De La Salle, who's been really good. And then at 5, we got Cardinal Newman at 14-2. They are just a really good team this year. They've won 4 of the last 5. They beat Windsor, Maria Carrillo, Montgomery, and then they just dominated Rancho Cotati at home. They did lose to Doherty Valley, but that's understandable as well because Doherty Valley's been great. But like I said, I do think that there's the team that I think can sneak in is Newark Memorial. They are 15-3. They are currently in number 9. But they have played some great teams. They beat SRV, Moreau, and James Logan. So they beat some tough teams, and they're proven that they really want it. So I do think Newark Memorial is a sleeper team for the boys side that can sneak in. Moving on to girls though, Midi at 1, St. Francis at 2, Lee at 3, SRV at 4, Monta Vista at 5. Now, the common theme with the first two teams is Midi and St. Francis both have 11 wins on the year. Midi has one tie. They tied to St. Francis at home, which was a good game. Greg was at that one. Apparently, it was a great game. St. Francis, they have a loss to the only loss that they have is in a SoCal tournament. But other than that, in the Bay Area, they have been dominant. They beat Presentation 3-0 in their most recent game, and they are also a great team. Lee is undefeated at 12-0. They are a team who I personally think is going to be a serious contender to make a really, really, really deep CCS playoff run. They are on a tear, and they have just absolutely looked like a team that is really, really, really ready to make their mark. And then SRV 10-1-1. They fell to Cal High at home, but those are rivalry games, so that was a close game. But other than that, they've been really good as well. Monta Vista, they're on a 3-match streak. They beat Foothill, they beat Dublin, they beat Cal, they beat Tam, Berkeley, Campo. Like they beat some really good teams. So Monta Vista is really, really good. And then honestly, a team I think that is going to start really making its mark, like I said, is Redwood. They're number 7, but they're 11-3-1, and they have been really good as of late. Like I said, Avery Tucker and Colette Boyden are leading that squad. They're on a 2-match streak right now, and they have some tough games coming up against San Marin and Tam, which are really going to tell how good they are. But if the Giants keep playing the way that they have, I think they have a chance to sneak into that top 5 at some point this year.
And then going off the top 3 in those girls rankings, you have some CCS predictions that you want to make, and those top 3 are going to be a major conversation in that prediction on the girls side.
Yeah, so what's interesting about the playoffs is NCS does not do open, unfortunately, but CCS does. Now for the girls, the teams that I think are going to be a shoe-in for the open are Midi, St. Francis, Lee, Mountain View, and SI are the main ones. Midi, St. Francis, obviously were in it last season. Lee and Mountain View and SI though, those teams. I mean, Lee is undefeated. It's hard to keep them out. Mountain View is also a great team. But I mean, SI has a really tough schedule, and they've been playing it really well. Let me look at who they played so far, just to give you guys an idea of the types of games that they played. They're 9-3-2, and they've played teams like Sacred Heart Prep, Menlo Atherton. They played Midi, and lost, but that was a close game. They played Presentation 1, Valley Christian. I mean, they're in a really tough league, and they fared pretty well. So yeah, they've done well.
Sorry, I muted myself. Go to the boys' side and try and see what kind of predictions you have for that side.
Yeah, so for boys' side, let me just run it through real quick. Because I'm sorry I'm talking too much. So the boys' side, it's gonna be St. Francis, I think, Mountain View, Midi, and Carlmont. Carlmont was not an open team last year, but the teams that they have beat this season and the way that they've played, I think it's gonna warrant them an open division selection this year.
Awesome. I'm going to give you, I know you went over your 10-minute allotment this time, but I do want to give you, because you're a Niner fan, give us your predictions for this NFC Championship game.
Ooh, in all seriousness, I think it's going to be a great game. I do think Detroit's offense is high powered, but Brock Purdy is him. So it's going to be a 31-24 game. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people say it is, just because Detroit's just a good high powered offense. But yeah, it's going to be a great game. If you haven't checked out Jack's story on Jared Goff coming back to the Bay, be sure to do that. It's a great story on it. But yeah, it's going to be a great game on Sunday.
I'm sorry, I just 31-24, because in our group chat, I
Oh,
remember
I was just
Niners by
talking crap, I mean, for me, in all seriousness though, it's the NFC Championship game. It's going to be a great game. It's not going to be a blowout. It can't be a blowout. If it is, it's going to be disappointing.
And this is the reason I hate the Niners, is because of Mr. Dylan Grausz. So thank him for my Niners hatred. Anyways, go read all of his stories on westcoastpreps.com. He's been killing it with the soccer coverage this year. Thank you a lot for coming on. Hi, Lucca. Welcome to the West Coast Preps podcast.
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Good. If anyone does not know, Lucca has been an intern for us over the last 6 months or so. He's done a great job over football and now with basketball coverage as well. And he is coming on today to talk about basketball as he has been in tune with a lot going on in Northern California basketball. So let's get things started right off with just kind of what the best invitational was, as there's obviously a ton of great ones in this area.
I think it's an interesting question because there's a lot of great invitationals, especially at the start of the season. They have a couple during MLK weekend, and I think it's great for non-league contests to get kind of who's the best team around. And in my opinion, I think that the top one is the Gridley Invitational up in Gridley, California, which is pretty far north. I think it's the best personally because they bring talent from all around NorCal, and there's a great story behind it, really good basketball. And this year ended on a buzzer beater with Salesian beating Branson, which are two of the top teams. A couple others to mention are the MLK Classic, the NorCal Tip-Off, and the Simply Challenge.
Yeah, that's definitely a top one that's been around for a long time. But the question is, does talent result into wins in the invitational and just in any basketball game in high school?
Taking two teams actually from the Gridley Invitational, Reardon and Salesian. I thought those were a couple pretty interesting teams because at the start of the year, I was super high on Reardon, and they had a lot of talent. They brought in a guy out of prolific prep, Zion Sensley, and they got in a bunch of transfers from Priory and from Pinole Valley. And they've looked like a great team. Don't get me wrong. They still are probably the top team in the CCS, but they haven't really put it together completely, whether that's through kind of transfer rules or whatnot. But I just think that's interesting to think about how better programs will usually do better because of their coaching. And a great example of that is Salesian, who has been a great program for a while, has a lot of really good depth, and like probably have 7-8 guys who are really, really solid. And I think they only have one Division I commit, but all their guys are really strong. Their coaching is really good. And I think that even having less talent will still result to more wins, as they ended up beating Reardon by like 20 in the MLK Classic.
And that falls right into line of, you want to talk about the NCS playoff race because there are so many good teams in that race right now. So what are some of the standouts that you're looking for in the North Coast section?
Yeah, I think that the North Coast section is probably one of the best section playoff races we've seen in a long time. I don't know for sure because I haven't been watching NorCal basketball for like 10 years yet, but I think there's a lot of great teams like Salesian, Branson, De La Salle, Granada, Redwood, San Ramon Valley, University, Clayton Valley, Moreau Catholic. Like there's a ton, probably 15 teams with a chance at getting to the top division, or like there's a lot of great teams. A couple of standouts are Salesian, Branson, De La Salle, and Granada, who are, in my opinion, top 10 teams in all of NorCal, and all have literally what it takes to be honestly the NorCal champion all together. You can even add teams like Redwood, who's really good at getting upsets over top teams, San Ramon Valley, who has a bunch of really good guys. And I think it's super interesting because literally any team could win it. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting race. If I had to put you on the spot and make you make a prediction right now, who would you choose?
I think I'd go with Salesian. I think they're just the most proven team. I think they're sitting at 20-1 right now, beating all their competition. I would pick Branson. I think Branson is probably a little bit better. They would be a little bit better, but because they ended up playing in the Gridley Invitational and Salesian ended up winning by 3 in overtime, it's not really fair to Salesian to put Branson over them. I think De La Salle and Granada are just a tier down from that.
Yeah, and De La Salle did just beat Granada last night as well. I know it was a closer game, but
it was 9 points.
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be a ton of fun in that open division when that time does come. But you want to talk about the Sac Joaquin section a little bit, and we've talked about it on this podcast before with Jack, how the Bay Area has really been able to dominate other sections, and Sac Joaquin section has been one of them. So just talk about them right now.
I think that the Sac Joaquin section has had a bunch of great teams in the past. I mean, you can look at Modesto Christian won a couple years back. Sheldon won a couple years back. They had a bunch of really great teams. Intercom's been really good the last couple years. And I still think there's a couple good teams right now: Monterey Trail, Modesto Christian, Vanden, Rockland, Intercom, just to name a couple. But I don't think they have the talent to compete with sections such as the North Coast section, or even you could say the Central Coast section. And I wouldn't say they fell off or anything, because they still have a lot of youth. If you look at Jalen Virgil out of Laguna Creek or Sincere Hudson out of Intercom, there's still a lot of great talent, especially in the youth. But I just think the Sacramento area is just falling off at least a little bit.
Yeah, they're definitely younger right now, and there's definitely a ton of talent there. But it seems like the Bay Area has been able to bring a talent to the top this year. But that brings us to your main point here: is who will be on the NorCal first team if we had to choose them right now?
I think it's a really tough question. There's a lot of great guys. It's so hard to choose a couple. If I were to personally give my picks, I would put Aaron Clater out of Salesian, Chase Butler out of Branson, Zion Sensley out of Reardon, Alec Blair out of De La Salle, and Tunde Yesufu out of St. Joseph. And to name the reserves or bench, I would give it to Connor Munson out of Clovis North, Samitri Carr out of Branson, Tyler Thompson out of Vanden, Gavin Rip out of Mitty, and Finley Keefe out of Branson.
Yeah, that would be a loaded team, and maybe one day we can start an all-star game and get all those guys to play in a game all together, because that would be a ton of fun. Well, thank you, Lucca, so much for joining the West Coast Press Podcast. We'll definitely have to have you on again as we get closer to the end of that NCS playoff race. And have a great one. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the last segment of the West Coast Press Podcast. We have one of my least favorite people in the world, I think. Chris Jackson is on today. How you doing?
It's the last segment, and it's probably the worst segment too. I think I would say usually they say save the best for last. I don't know if you want me as the closer or the starter or anywhere in there.
Well, we are recording this right before we post the podcast, so no need for any predictions or predicting the future for Chris. Everything is going to be current as to what happened when this gets posted. So let's get things started right away. The biggest question we have: how do the Lions beat the 49ers? I'm joking. We don't.
Jared Goff, Marin County boy, torches the Niners. I think that's it right there.
We're gonna stay focused on Sacramento basketball. The first one we have to go to, it happened last night. Brandon Gibson's latest masterpiece, and is he the athlete of the year?
I think everybody on social media was talking about that last night, right? It seemed like it almost felt like one of those big time NBA things, like Embiid dropping 70, right? But on the high school Twitter scene, it was just popping off. And he scored 52 points for Monterey Trail last night, who was already the number 2 team. It was already him and I would say Mark Lavernoff from Rockland were kind of neck and neck right here, and Lavernoff on the number 1 team. But scoring 52 points and that efficiency of 22 of 26 shooting, 6 of 8 from 3. Sometimes you get a lot of points, but it's high volume shots like we've seen Russell Westbrook do. Some other guys at every level do that. He's not that. He's very efficient and smart. He's got some D2 offers. The fact he doesn't have a D1 offer, I know you don't need to worry about the D1 or bust mentality, but the fact he doesn't have a Division 1 offer is asinine. I would confidently say, but I think he's the front runner now. You score 52 points like that, he's already averaging over 20 a game, and you've got that kind of efficiency that pretty much almost locks up the race, I would say.
Yeah, there's still a couple of weeks left, but scoring 52 on that type of efficiency is insane. But there's been some crazy milestones that have been recently hit. Go through some of those.
Yeah, it seemed like this last week, especially everywhere, it was just milestone here, milestone there. It was like, how do I keep a milestone thing out of a roundup headline last week, right? But it was Casa Roble, right? They had that great football season. Well, boys basketball's doing pretty well too, and they've got Benny Ambrose. He's going to celebrate 1,000 career points on Friday, and guess what? He's still got another year of high school left after this. He's got a big milestone that he's achieved, and going to celebrate that Friday, and that might actually be the game of the week. And then at Folsom, you had Cameron Mafua, senior girls basketball star, top 100 player nationally, signed with Cal, just hit 1,000 career points last week against Whitney, who a top 5 team. They beat 75-18, which shows you how good Folsom is this year, especially at full strength with Mafua. And she was a McDonald's All-American nominee for a while, didn't make the final roster, but a Jordan Lee at St. Mary's did, which is a great milestone. The 5th player in St. Mary's history to make it to the McDonald's All-American game. You drive into that campus, you see all those pictures of WNBA and NBA stars, and got a feeling she'll be next. That's another milestone. You've got Rockland's head coach Steve Taylor hit 500 career wins last week. They beat Granite Bay. They beat Whitney, now 23-0. Hard to do, especially in the SFL, to keep winning like that. He's one of the best. And then at West High School in Tracy, their head coach Brandon Parks hit 150 career wins last week. And then one milestone that I'm looking at, we'll get into in a minute, but Liberty Ranch is a milestone that looks like it's going to come up really, really soon.
Yeah. And before we get into that, you want to talk about this 2026 class. It's a similar take to what I had about the football class in 2023. Best class ever. Is this the best girls hoop class in Sacramento?
Yeah, it's really good. The 2024 class is really good with some stars, but what 2026 is showing right now is everyone. There's some girls that are still waiting to really have that bubble burst in terms of recruiting, stock, and all that stuff. I imagine during AAU, during that whole Section 7 and the whole Cali Life thing that happens, I think, in Rockland or Roseville in June will really open some eyes. But yeah, the one that I saw on Tuesday, Haley Smith at Liberty Ranch, she's a sophomore. Already 917 career points, and you give her averages, you give her another 4 games, she's probably hitting that mark, right? But she is wildly efficient, a great passer. As our head coach Josh Williams said, as we go as she goes, she makes everybody better, and she's got a Fresno State offer already. But coolest thing about her story too is her older brother's a D1 football player at Ball State. He's 6'7" defensive end. Both of her parents, her dad played football at Cal, her mother basketball at Cal. And then let's just take a look at some of the other stuff in her family too. She's had family members play at Harvard, at Whittier, at UC Santa Barbara, right? So Haley Smith's seen success, and I don't think it's crazy to say that she might be the best of them all. And I think that's probably what everybody's rooting for. But 917 career points already, and you're just over halfway through your sophomore season is ridiculous. I mean, she could play college softball if she wants to. She's already a 2-year varsity player, and she has club volleyball practices after basketball and on weekends. So it's you got to be a little nuts and a little crazy to do that. And then Lauren Harris at Faith Christian, a sophomore. I mean, it's last week she had 53 points, 15 rebounds, and 9 threes in one game. Then this past game, 29 points, 12 rebounds, 4 threes, but she's averaging over 29 points a game, second in the state in total made threes, and number 1 in made threes per game. So that 2026 class there. And then I look at a girl like Joy Omashakin at Christian Brothers as a stud, and she just had a big game for Christian Brothers again last night too. But the sophomore class seems like everywhere, even the Bay Area. I know Jack's mentioned, I think Ethan Castle's mentioned, it just seems like the future's really bright, not in just Sacramento, but Northern California.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that 26 class is the next one to look for in that senior year. When they are seniors, will be crazy. But we're going to get into Laguna Creek, and we've seen time and time again, it's not about the best team. It's about when you get hot at the right time. And is Laguna Creek the one that's getting hot at the right time?
Yeah, I would say so. I think your Giants hat is almost perfect for that, because anytime they won those 3 World Series, right, were they the best the whole regular season? No, but they got hot at the right time and won when they needed to and just went crazy, right? And Laguna Creek's playing just excellent basketball. They beat Grant last night. They've got a good collection of talent. 5-2 in league, still in 3rd place, but considering the way they're playing, they've got 2nd place Burbank coming to their home tomorrow night in Elk Grove. They've got a chance to keep inching their way up. And you've got a freshman like Jalen Virgil, who just got his first D1 offer as well. Kind of speaks to the young talent again there. But he just had 17 points, had some big threes, and got some older guys too. KJ Ramey hit kind of the game clinching 15 points. I think Laguna Creek early on in the year, they had a lot of talent, but it was just about meshing it together and getting some of the young guys really acclimated to varsity basketball. And I think Laguna Creek's right there. They still got to get past Monterey Trail in that league, but I think they could give them a better fight than they did that first meeting. And heck, finishing 2nd in the Metro League probably means you finish 1st in a lot of other leagues this year, just because Monterey Trail's a different beast this year.
Yeah. And then your last topic that you want to go over, what are some girls and boys teams that are expected to make extra noise in the stretch run?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to Christian Brothers. I know I just mentioned their sophomore, but they've got their star Kaya Foster set to come back from an ACL tear soon. She tore that in the section final last year. She looks like she's going to come back, but without her, they've still played really good basketball. Shannon Foster knows how to coach, but they've got Aaliyah Harmon, a junior captain, who just had 20 points last night, 8 steals. You've got that sophomore Joy has got 16 points, 5 steals. They've got a freshman Olivia Novi with the Cal Poly offer. I mean, when I saw them, I think she hit 5 or 6 threes, and she's every bit a national type prospect. I would say you add Kaya Foster into this mix with already the way these youngsters have stepped up and the way Aaliyah Harmon's really stepped up as a captain in Kaya Foster's absence. Christian Brothers has a very, very good chance to return back to the Golden One Center next month and play for a section crown. And then in boys, watched their stream last week, but 12 Bridges, that length, it's hard to match up, especially at this level where you've got 2 forwards that are 6'6" or taller, and they're both really smooth athletic players. You got Jacob Gilchrist, a UC Davis signee. He's scored 30 plus points in numerous games this year. James Sweet, another guy. He's a stud too. Had them have some big games. They got depth in that backcourt too. You've got Jonah Gilchrist, David High. They've got a lot of guys, and they're in first place in that league. And I think in D5, 12 Bridges can make a lot of noise. And then the other one, back to the Capital Athletic League, is Capital Christian. They were 1 point away from winning at Sacramento in overtime a couple weeks ago. Sac comes to their place on Tuesday, and Capital Christian's got a lot of pieces. Now their full rosters here. They've added 2 players to the mix. Danny Panda's really good. Jeff Tambala's been playing really well. It's 1 point away. They've won some big games since. 6 straight. Crushed Christian Brothers. They beat Clayton Valley Charter and Bishop O'Dowd, beat some really great Bay Area programs, and they've got another player of the year candidate. Jalen Valdez is a D1 offer. He's really crafty, and you add in CJ Willenborg, who's a great shooter as well, great all-around player, and Miles Wiggins in that front court. And I think Capital Christian has a lot of pieces to, I think, make this Capital Athletic League race maybe even a tie at the top when Sacramento goes back to their place, and perhaps make a run all the way to Golden One Center too.
Well, that is all the topics that we have today, but I have one topic that I have to give you because I gave it to Jack and Dylan. Give me a prediction for this Detroit Lions football game coming up this weekend.
Oh no, I don't want to get the Niners the satisfaction. I'm a noted Niners hater, and I always will be. I'm picking the hometown here. I'm picking Jared Goff, Marin County all the way. I love Marin County. Let's give Jared Goff that win. Silence the Niners crowd. Silence the so-called Niner faithful, Niner gain, and bring Detroit back to the Super Bowl. Could you imagine, though, the Lions going to the Super Bowl, how crazy those fans would be? I mean, that would be one of the greatest stories. Oh, yeah. And that's what I'm hoping for. And you know what? I'm going to say the Lions win.
We have lost a ton of subscribers on this one episode just for being Niner haters. Maybe we've gained some, though, too. I'm picking the Lions 31-27. Maybe.
Yeah, hopefully the refs are not on the Niner side this time. Let's be real. There were some ridiculously missed calls. Intentional grounding right before a touchdown, that whole 4th down ball spot, and the Niners lined up offsides. Let's do better in the NFC Championship.
I'm going to hurt every Niners fan's heart. I hope there's a Kyle Williams repeat in this game.
That was one of the best memories of my football life. I'll never forget all of those times, man. And just the next day at school, oh, the look on Niners fans' faces. It was, I don't know if I've ever been happier than that day.
Yeah, we just lost half our fan base here. All of our subscriptions went down, but that's okay. All right, that's it for Chris Jackson. Make sure you go read all of his stuff on westcoastpreps.com. He's got incredible stories coming out every single day. And that is it for the West Coast Preps podcast. Thank you. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the West Coast Preps podcast, the 2nd edition of our new format here. Make sure you comment below if you like this new format, what you would like to see in this new format, maybe some topics that you would like to see as well. Comment just what you like about it. So thank you very much for coming on, to all of our guests, Jack, Dylan, Lucca, and Chris. And last of all, to all of our non-Niner fans, go Detroit Lions and have a great weekend. See you next week.